Robb Stark, the young wolf, the king in the north, is perhaps one of the most interesting characters in the entire Game of Thrones series. Robb, although young and relatively inexperienced, united the bannermen of the north to wage war in the wake of his father Eddard Stark's execution at the orders of King Joffrey Baratheon. In today's video, I'll be taking you through the entire life of Robb, from his early days in Winterfell to him being crowned king, and all the way up to his untimely death due to the betrayal of Houses Bolton and Frey. Welcome to Game of Thronelore. This is the life of Robb Stark, the King in the North. Robb was the firstborn child of Lord Eddard and Lady Catelyn Stark of Winterfell. He was raised there along with his half-brother Jon, who was of a similar age. According to Catelyn, Robb was conceived on the night of her wedding to Ned in Riverrun. He had a relatively pleasant childhood, but being the heir of Winterfell, he followed and learned everything he could from his father's teachings, as did his half-brother Jon. The boys trained together at arms ever since they were big enough to walk, their favourite game being Knights and Heroes. A rather interesting tale of Robb's youth was a time when he and Jon built a great mountain of snow above a gate. They were spotted by Mance Rayder, then a brother of the Night's Watch, who had accompanied the visiting Lord Commander Cargyle. Mance promised not to tell on the boys, and the two eventually dumped the snow on Fat Tom, the slowest of Lord Eddard's household guards, who chased him around the grounds afterwards. After Greyjoy's rebellion in 289 AC, Eddard brought to Winterfell a hostage, Theon Greyjoy, the last surviving son of Lord Balon, to ensure that the Lord would not think of rebelling again. Robb and Jon came to befriend Theon and enjoy the elder boy's company. In time, they even looked upon him as their own brother. Robb's story now moves to the first novel, where he witnesses the execution of deserting Night's Watch Ranger Jared at the hands of his father Eddard. Shortly afterwards, the Stark family discover a litter of 6 direwolf pups, and Robb claims a pup for himself, naming it Greywind. Shortly after the court of King Robert Baratheon arrives at Winterfell, Robb spars with the young Crown Prince Joffrey, using wooden swords. However, bad blood develops between the two when Joffrey challenges Robb to spar with live steel instead. Sir Rodrik Cassel, Winterfell's Master-at-Arms, does not allow it, to the mockery of many of the present Lannister retainers. When his father Eddard is named Hand of the King to Robert Baratheon and journeys south to King's Landing, Robb remains in Winterfell to rule in his father's stead with the help of his mother Catelyn. She later travels to King's Landing, however, after an assassin tries to kill Bran Stark, so the responsibility of Winterfell falls solely on Robb. Sometime later, Theon and Robb then rescue the crippled Bran from the wildlings and deserters from the Night's Watch in the Wolfswood. After word of Eddard's arrest in King's Landing for treason against the late King Robert's successor Joffrey reaches Winterfell, Robb calls the Stark bannermen to war. His youth and inexperience is questioned by his father's bannermen, such as Jon Umber, but he manages to unite them behind him. When Robb marches south to the Riverlands, his motives are to support his mother's house, House Tully, in response to the invasion of the Lannisters from the Westerlands, and with the ultimate goal of freeing Eddard. Robb resides in the Gatehouse Tower while encamped at Moat Cailin. Bran remains at Winterfell with Maester Luwin and Rodrik Cassel. Upon learning that Riverrun has been besieged by a host led by Sir Jaime Lannister, whilst another force led by Lord Tywin Lannister approaches from the south, Robb splits his forces, sending his foot under the command of Lord Roose Bolton to engage Tywin's army, while crossing the Green Fork at the Twins with the majority of his horse. His goal is to ride and lift the siege of Riverrun. For allowing him crossing and his allegiance at the Twins, Lord Walder Frey extracts the price of a marriage contract, ensuring that Robb will marry a daughter of his house to be chosen after the war is finished. Robb leads his horsemen to Riverrun, where, aided by the counsel of his great uncle Sir Brynden Tully, he achieved complete surprise in ambushing Jaime's army in the Whispering Wood, annihilating Jaime's forces and taking him captive. Robb is protected by a company of highborn warriors who become his friends and companions. Shortly thereafter, Robb is able to lift the siege of Riverrun through the Battle of the Camps, scattering Jaime's remaining forces. This forces Tywin's army, which had scored an important victory against Roose Bolton's Foot in the Battle of the Green Fork, to unfortunately retreat back to Harrenhal. Upon Eddard Stark's execution in King's Landing at the command of King Joffrey, effectively ending any possibility of peace between the Starks and Lannisters, Robb is crowned at Riverrun by his bannermen and the Riverlords as King in the North. The Rivermen then later grant him the title the King of the Trident. Jon Snow then leaves Castle Black so he can help his half-brother, but Jon's new brothers in the Night's Watch convince him to return, as it would still be considered desertion. Robb's story then moves to a clash of kings, where the Riverrun Smith creates him a crown inspired by the past crowns of winter. The bronze circlet depicts runes of the first men and is decorated with 9 black iron spikes shaped like long swords. Remaining idle for a time at Riverrun, Robb sends Theon Greyjoy, who fought with him in the Whispering Wood, to Pike, with the goal of securing an alliance with his father Lord Baelon against the Lannisters in exchange for the recognition of the independence of the Iron Islands. Theon is rebuffed outright by Lord Baelon, who responds to the offer for peace with a large-scale invasion of the North. Robb also sends his mother Catelyn south to treat with the late King Robert's youngest brother Renly Baratheon, who has also crowned himself king. Catelyn is unable to secure any meaningful treaty with either Renly or his elder brother Stannis, who has besieged Renly's seat of Storm's End after also declaring himself king. Catelyn flees back to Riverrun after witnessing Renly's assassination. Having sent Theon and Catelyn on their ultimately unsuccessful missions, Robb heads west to deal with Stafford Lannister's host before it is fully trained. Catelyn's brother, Sir Edmure Tully, holds Riverrun and guards Robb's rear. Bypassing the Golden Tooth using a goat track found by Grey Wind, Robb smashes Stafford's host in the Battle of Oxcross and has his bannermen plunder parts of the Westerlands. He captures several castles, including Ashmark, seat of House Marbrand, and the Crag, seat of House Westerling. At the Crag, Robb suffers a wound and is tended to by Jane Westerling. There he learns that a small force, led by his one-time friend and considered brother, Theon Greyjoy, has taken Winterfell and murdered his younger brothers Bran and Rickon, although the two youths actually escaped. Jane comforts Robb upon hearing this news, which leads to his taking her maidenhood. In an effort to preserve her honour, Robb weds her immediately thereafter. The Frey host that had accompanied Robb into the Westerlands and battle are furious and withdraw their support. Robb returns to Riverrun with his new wife in tow, much to his mother Catelyn's horror, as he had previously pledged to wed a daughter of House Frey. This was not a slight that Lord Frey is likely to overlook. Other problems await Robb in Riverrun. Sir Edmure Tully, acting Lord Paramount of the Trident whilst his father Hoster Tully lays on his deathbed, met Tywin Lannister's army as they attempted to cross the Red Fork at a ford near Riverrun and threw them back. While the Battle of the Fords prevented Tywin's army from approaching Robb from the rear, Robb's plan had been to entangle Tywin's army in a chase in the west, while Stannis Baratheon marched on King's Landing. Being thrown back at Riverrun allowed Tywin's forces to turn around and arrive at the capital in time for the Battle of the Blackwater, which in turn turned the tide of the battle and then indeed the war in House Lannister's favour. With problems on every side, Robb seems only to take solace in the company of the Westerlings, his loving wife Jane, her brother Sir Reynold, his banner bearer, and their younger brother Robb's new squire Rollum. With all others, he is the solemn king in the north. Additionally, Robb learns that in her grief over the supposed murder of her two sons, Catelyn released Jaime Lannister from captivity and entrusted him with a secret mission to return her daughters Sansa and Arya to her, if possible. This earns her the enmity of Lord Rickard Karstark, as Jaime had slain two of Rickard's sons in the Whispering Wood.
Free.
I lost one son, fighting by your son's side. I lost another to the Kingslayer, strangled with a chain. commit treason because your children are prisoners, I would carve out my heart.
Rickard requires vengeance for their deaths. In response to Jaime's release, Lord Karstark sends his horsemen to search the countryside for Jaime, and then leads a small group in murdering 2 prisoners, Tyon Frey and Willem Lannister, in a tower of Riverrun. For this crime, Robb sentences him to death and beheads Lord Rickard himself. After the death of Hoster Tully, Robb intends to return to the north, reclaim his territory, much of which has been conquered by the Ironborn, and avenge the deaths of Bran and Rickon. Aware that he slighted Walder Frey in his marriage to Jane Westerling, Robb suggests that Edmure Tully wed one of Lord Walder Frey's daughters in his stead, a proposal to which Edmure reluctantly agrees. Leaving Jane behind at Riverrun, Robb takes his host north towards the Twins, where Edmure is to marry Lord Walder's daughter Rosalind. Because he believes his brother's dead and Arya lost, and fearing that, by the laws of succession, were he to die without issue, Winterfell and the North would go to Sansa's new husband, Tyrion Lannister, Robb discusses the matter of his succession with his mother. To her disapproval, he suggests that if he were to die, his bastard half-brother Jon Snow should succeed him. Because Grey Wind is aggressive towards the Freys when Robb arrives at the Twins, the direwolf is penned up. Robb apologises to Lord Frey and receives salt and bread. Despite guest rights, Walder betrays Robb during the feast after the wedding of Rosalind and Edmure. In what is later known as the Red Wedding, Robb's companions and men are murdered by the Freys, fur-clad Northmen and sellswords disguised as musicians. Catelyn watches Roose Bolton deliver the final blow to her son, stabbing him through the heart and betraying his king and the North. Driven mad with despair, Catelyn murders Walder's Lackwit grandson Jinglebell and is killed shortly thereafter herself. Grey Wind, who had been chained to the placket at the Freys, is also slain via crossbow bolts, his head removed and then sewn onto Robb's body as a final insult to the king in the north. Robb Stark was strong enough to unite his bannermen. He was brave and courageous enough to lead the north into war, and led by the example his father Eddard Stark had set before him. However, his crucial and costly mistake was down to his own contradiction. Robb once said that the men of the north made him king and could just as easily unmake him. Yet when it came to upholding the honour of his quickly wedded wife, he failed to see the bigger picture in his dishonour of his previous promise to House Frey, along with his mother's release of Jaime Lannister. He still remains one of the more exciting and multi-dimensional characters within the Game of Thrones series. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate your support. Everyone, notifications of uploads are more important than ever. So please, if you haven't already, turn those notifications on to make sure you're notified the moment my video goes live. Making videos is what I love to do. It's my dream and my passion. However, it does cost time and money to produce this content. So if you have $1 to spare to support me on Patreon in exchange for some exclusive unseen content, then you can click the Patreon link below or at the end of this video. Please only support me if you can afford it. And make sure to follow me on Instagram at InstaDeanJ and on Twitter at PotterFolklore. Check out my other videos appearing on screen, and please make sure, most importantly, to hit that subscribe button. Thanks again everyone, and please have a great day.